In a luxurious garden decorated for a high-class wedding, the instruments begin to play, and everyone stands to welcome the stunning bride. Suddenly, a small 6-year-old beggar girl bursts through the central aisle, running desperately. "Sir, don't get married. She's going to poison you," shouts the girl, pointing at the bride. The millionaire immediately recognizes the little girl, and what he does next leaves everyone horrified. The afternoon sun gilded the roses in the most luxurious garden of Oakhaven Hills, where hundreds of white chairs were perfectly aligned on the immaculate lawn. Gabriel Montgomery adjusted his Italian silk tie for the 10th time in front of the Venetian mirror in his master suite. At 62, his face still retained an elegance that, combined with his neatly trimmed grey hair and grey-green eyes, made many women sigh. But there was only one who captured his thoughts at that moment. Marina Sinclair, his fiancée. The butler knocked discreetly on the door. "Sir, the first guests are arriving." Gabriel took a deep breath, trying to calm a heart that pounded like a teenager's. After 5 years of mourning the death of Helena, his partner of 3 decades, he had finally found someone who made his eyes sparkle again. Marina had appeared in his life like a ray of sunshine after a long storm, illuminating the empty corridors of the mansion with her radiant presence and enigmatic smile. Outside, gardeners were putting the finishing touches on the climbing roses, decorating the altar. Arrangements of white orchids and champagne-colored roses harmonized perfectly with the silk ribbons dancing in the gentle breeze. Waiters in immaculate tuxedos circulated with crystal trays, serving champagne to guests arriving in luxury cars. No one noticed the small figure sneaking among the bushes at the back of the property. Clara, barely 6 years old, knew every inch of that garden. For months, she had frequented the mansion gates drawn by the kindness of Mr. Gabriel, the rich man who always offered her snacks and a few dollars, treating her with a dignity the girl had never found in her wanderings on the streets. Her worn clothes and bare feet contrasted dramatically with the refined environment. Her dirty face, framed by tousled brown curls, hid a sharp intelligence and fierce determination. Clara knew she had to act fast. For the past 2 weeks, she had witnessed things that chilled her small heart every time she thought of them. The music began to play softly, announcing the start of the ceremony. Guests took their seats. Women in designer dresses adjusted their elegant hats. Men in expensive suits talked business in low voices. Gabriel positioned himself at the altar, his slightly trembling hands betraying his anxiety. Clara approached stealthily, her heart beating so hard it felt like it wanted to leap out of her chest. The words she had overheard at the cafe 2 weeks ago echoed in her mind. After the wedding, it's just a matter of time. The insurance policy is already set, and in 6 months, no one will suspect a thing. The wedding march began, majestic and solemn. All the guests rose like an elegant wave, turning towards the garden entrance. Marina appeared, stunning in her Valentino gown, her French lace veil floating like a cloud around her. Her calculated smile hid secrets that only Clara knew. The girl felt tears burn her eyes. She liked Mr. Gabriel so much, with his genuine kindness and kind eyes. He was the only person who treated her like a human being, who cared if she had eaten, if she was cold. And now, in an impulse born of desperation and the purest love a child can feel, Clara ran. Her bare feet barely touched the red carpet. As she advanced down the central aisle, ignoring the shocked gasps and indignant exclamations of the guests. "Mr. Gabriel, don't marry her!" Her childish voice echoed through the garden, laden with urgency and fear. "She's going to poison you." The silence that followed was deafening. Time seemed to freeze in that perfect instant of chaos. Gabriel, at the altar, paled as he recognized his little friend from the streets. Marina, still at the garden entrance, let her bouquet of white roses slip through her trembling fingers. And Clara, standing in the middle of the aisle in her torn dress. and determined eyes knew her life would never be the same after that moment. 2 weeks before the wedding, Clara was rummaging through the trash cans in the wealthy neighborhood as she did every morning. The sun had barely risen, and the cool autumn breeze made her fingers numb as she searched for anything useful or sellable. She found an almost new shoebox that could serve as a container for her few belongings and a clean newspaper she would use to line the cardboard where she slept. Approaching the back of the Montgomery mansion, her heart warmed at the smell of fresh bread coming from the kitchen. Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper who had worked at the house for 30 years, used to leave a small bag with bread and fruit near the back gate, pretending not to see when Clara picked it up. It was her small morning ritual of hope. That morning, however, something was different. Cheerful voices came from the backyard, one easily recognizable, the deep, gentle tone of Mr. Gabriel, who always had a kind word and a few dollars for her. Clara approached silently, hiding behind a hydrangea bush. "Marina, you've completely transformed my life." Gabriel's voice was thick with emotion. "After Helena passed, I thought I'd never smile again. But you..." "Shh." The female voice was soft as velvet. "The past is past, my love. Now you have me, and I'll take care of you forever." Clara peeked through the flowers and saw the couple sitting on the marble bench near the fountain. Gabriel held the hands of a stunning woman with long black hair and a red dress that seemed to float in the breeze. Her face had delicate features, but there was something in her eyes that made Clara instinctively shrink back. "We need to review a few wedding details," Marina continued, her voice melodious. "Have you spoken to your lawyer about the changes to the will?" "Yes, my dear. It's all arranged as you suggested. I want you to be protected if anything happens to me." Clara watched Marina smile, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The girl had seen that kind of smile before on the streets. It was the smile of con artists, of those who feigned kindness to get what they wanted. Hours later, while looking for bottles to recycle near downtown, Clara passed in front of the Bellevue Cafe, an elegant establishment frequented by the local elite. Her heart almost stopped when she recognized the red dress through the window. Marina was sitting at a discreet table in the back of the cafe, but she wasn't alone. A man in a dark suit, with graying temples, held her hand across the table. Their faces close in an intimacy that made Clara's stomach churn. The girl snuck into the cafe, taking advantage of the maitre d's distraction as he attended to a noisy group of ladies. She hid under an empty table, protected by the long white linen tablecloth. "Everything's on track." Marina's voice had lost all the sweetness she showed Gabriel. "The old man is completely smitten. He's already changed the will and increased the insurance policy payout as we suggested." "And the poison?" the man asked in a low voice. "I got something perfect. It'll look like a natural heart problem. In 6 months, we'll be millionaires." Clara covered her mouth with her hands to stifle a sob. Silent tears streamed down her dirty face as she continued to listen to the details of the macabre plan. "And that little street rat who hangs around the mansion?" the man asked. "You said he has a soft spot for her." "I've taken care of that too," Marina replied dismissively. "I convinced Gabriel to make a generous donation to an urban cleanup program. Soon, we won't have any more vagrants circulating in the neighborhood." Clara felt her small world crumble. Not only had she discovered a terrible plan against the only person who treated her kindly, but she was also about to lose the only place where she felt safe. She waited for the couple to leave the cafe and ran as fast as she could, her heart pounding erratically. She had to warn Mr. Gabriel, but how? Who would believe a street girl against such an elegant and sophisticated woman? That night, lying on her cardboard under the awning of a closed shop, Clara cried herself to sleep. But before sleep overcame her, she made a promise to herself. No matter how, she would find a way to save Mr. Gabriel. The next morning, Clara woke before sunrise, determined to find a way to talk to Gabriel. Her stomach rumbled with hunger, but she ignored the discomfort. Something more important was at stake. She walked quickly through the still deserted streets of the wealthy neighborhood, mentally rehearsing what she would say. Upon reaching the gates of the Montgomery mansion, however, she faced her first unpleasant surprise. Two burly security guards in black suits stood guard where previously there had only been a friendly elderly gatekeeper. "Hey you! Get out of here!" one of them shouted as soon as he saw her. Clara recoiled instinctively, but didn't give up. She knew other entrances. For months, she had observed the mansion's routine and knew of a small gap in the back wall, partially hidden by a vine. She headed there, her heart pounding. "Looking for something, little one?" The soft voice made her freeze. Marina was standing there, wearing an elegant workout outfit, as if she had just returned from a walk. Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were cold as ice. I need to talk to Mr. Gabriel," Clara stammered, trying to keep her voice steady. "How lovely," Marina approached, her expensive perfume enveloping Clara like a suffocating cloud. "You know, dear, I've been talking to Gabriel about you. He's very worried. A little girl like you shouldn't be on the streets. Maybe it's time. We found a more suitable place for you." The veiled threat made Clara take a step back. "I don't need help. I just want to talk to him." "Gabriel is very busy with the wedding preparations," Marina declared, her tone losing its sweetness. "And soon, this neighborhood will no longer be a place for people like you." Just then, a car parked nearby. Gabriel got out of the driver's seat, his face lighting up when he saw Clara. "My little friend," he exclaimed, approaching with a genuine smile. "I've missed you." Marina immediately looped her arm through Gabriel's, her expression transforming into pure adoration. "Darling, I was just telling the little one how worried we are about her. Maybe we could—" "Mr. Gabriel," Clara interrupted, stepping forward. "I need to tell you something important. It's about—" "Oh, Gabriel!" Marina exclaimed suddenly. "Isn't it time for your meeting with the decorator? And then we have that lunch with your partners." Gabriel consulted his watch and sighed. "You're right, my dear. Clara, honey, take this." He pulled a few bills from his wallet. "Buy yourself something to eat. I promise we'll talk properly another day." "But Mr. Gabriel—" Clara tried again, but Marina was already guiding Gabriel into the mansion. "The new security guards will make sure she doesn't get hurt around here," Marina said sweetly. "Won't you, gentlemen?" The men in black approached threateningly, and Clara had no choice but to run. Her tears of frustration mixed with the dust of the path as she hurried away. For the next 3 days, Clara tried various approaches. She waited at the door of Gabriel's office building, but was thrown out. She tried to deliver a note through a courier, but Marina intercepted the message. Each frustrated attempt increased her desperation. On a particularly hot afternoon, Clara was watching the mansion from the shade of a tree when she noticed movement in the backyard. Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper, was hanging sheets on the clothesline. The girl approached cautiously. "Mrs. Peterson," she called in a low voice. The housekeeper looked around before answering. "Child, you shouldn't be here. Things have changed a lot." "Please," Clara begged, "I need to talk to Mr. Gabriel. It's important." "I've been trying to talk to him too," Mrs. Peterson whispered, moving closer to the wall. "There's something wrong with that fiancée. The other day, I caught her meddling with the boss's medication, but when I tried to comment, the sound of heels on the stone path interrupted their conversation." Mrs. Peterson quickly returned to the sheets, and Clara hid behind a bush. "Peterson," Marina's voice sounded authoritarian, "I thought I made it clear I don't want anyone talking. Near the walls, there are too many unwanted eyes and ears around." "Sorry, ma'am. I was just talking to myself, an old woman's habit." "Well, you'd better control those habits," Marina warned. "I wouldn't want to have to look for a more discreet housekeeper." Clara clenched her fists tightly, feeling more alone than ever. But as she watched Marina walk away, an idea began to form in her mind. If she couldn't reach Gabriel, she needed to find someone else who could help her. And maybe, just maybe, she knew exactly where to look. On the busiest corner of the affluent neighborhood, Miss Violet had been selling flowers for over 40 years. Her small kiosk, covered in flowering vines and protected by a faded awning, was a landmark for everyone. The 70-year-old woman knew every resident, every story, every secret whispered among the petals of her roses. Clara had always liked spending time there. Miss Violet never chased her away and sometimes let her help organize the flower buckets, rewarding her with a sweet roll or a piece of fruit. More importantly, the florist was one of the few people who had also noticed something strange about Marina. "That woman," Miss Violet had once commented, "has eyes that have never planted a flower in their life. You know, child, someone who doesn't know how to care for a flower, doesn't know how to care for a heart." That morning, Clara approached the kiosk with hesitant steps. Her frustrated attempts to warn Gabriel had left her exhausted and scared. The mansion's security guards now chased her whenever they saw her nearby, and she was sure she was being watched. "Miss Violet," she called softly, hiding behind a bucket of daisies. The florist adjusted her gold-rimmed glasses and smiled. "Clara, I was just thinking about you. Want to help me with these dahlias?" While they arranged the flowers, Clara nervously watched the street. It was then she noticed a man standing on the corner, pretending to read a newspaper. It was the same man she'd seen talking to Marina at the cafe. "What is it, little one?" Miss Violet asked, noticing her discomfort. "That man," Clara whispered. "He's following me." The florist looked discreetly in the indicated direction. "He's been showing up here for 3 days. I thought he was interested in my roses, but now—" Clara felt tears well up. In a low voice, she began to tell Miss Violet everything she had discovered. The conversation at the cafe, Marina's veiled threats, her frustrated attempts to warn Gabriel. Good heavens, Miss Violet paled. Gabriel has always been a good man, helped so many people. We can't let this happen. But what can I do? No one believes me. The florist was silent for a moment, her eyes fixed on the roses she had just received. "You know, Clara, I lost my granddaughter 10 years ago. She would have been your age now. Since then, I swore I would never again close my eyes to a child needing help." Miss Violet took a set of keys from her apron pocket. "Come with me." She led Clara to a side door of the kiosk, which opened onto a small staircase. Upstairs was a tiny but cozy apartment, with lace curtains on the windows and pots of violets everywhere. "I live up here," she explained. "It's not much, but it's safe. You can stay with me while we think of a plan." Clara looked in awe at the clean, organized space. A real bed, a bathroom with a shower, a small kitchen. It seemed like a dream. But what about the man downstairs? "Leave him to me." Miss Violet smiled, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "It's not the first time I've had to shake off bad people from my territory." Going downstairs again, the florist began to work as usual. But Clara noticed she was doing something different. For every customer who arrived, Miss Violet had a specific comment about the man on the corner. "Poor thing, he's been out there in the sun for hours. They say he's a private investigator. Looks like he's watching someone." In less than an hour, the buzz had spread. The man, noticing the stares and whispers, finally disappeared. "Never underestimate the power of well-aimed gossip." Miss Violet winked at Clara, who was watching everything from the apartment window. That night, for the first time in years, Clara slept in a real bed, clean and fed, but her heart was still heavy. The wedding was only 10 days away, and she knew Marina wouldn't give up easily. "We'll think of something," Miss Violet promised, as she tucked her in with a soft blanket. Tomorrow is flower delivery day at the Montgomery Mansion, and you, my dear, are going to help me, just a little differently than usual." Clara fell asleep, lulled by the scent of flowers, and for the first time in days allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. With Miss Violet by her side, maybe, just maybe, she could save Mr. Gabriel before it was too late. The sun had barely risen when Miss Violet began to prepare Clara for her role. The girl hardly recognized herself in the mirror. She wore a simple but clean outfit. Her hair was tied back in a neat braid, and her face, for the first time in a long while, was completely clean. "You'll be my helper today," Miss Violet explained, as she adjusted a small apron on Clara. "Marina has ordered arrangements for a luncheon she's hosting for her bridesmaids. It's our chance to observe more closely." At the kiosk, they arranged dozens of white orchids and champagne-colored roses into sophisticated arrangements. Clara watched, fascinated, as the florist's wrinkled hands transformed the flowers into true works of art. "Remember," Miss Violet instructed as they loaded the arrangements into her small van, "you're my grandniece, helping me out during your school break. If anyone asks, your mother works in another state and you're living with me temporarily." Clara nodded, mentally repeating the story they had created. Her heart pounded as they approached the gates of the Montgomery Mansion. "Deliveries for Mrs. Sinclair's luncheon," Miss Violet announced to the security guards in her most professional voice. After a brief check, they were allowed to enter. Clara kept her head down, carefully holding one of the smaller arrangements. Inside the mansion, the bustle was intense. Staff hurried back and forth, setting the dining room table, polishing silverware, adjusting linen tablecloths. "The flowers can be placed there," one of the staff members indicated. "Mrs. Sinclair is in the study with her bridesmaids, finalizing some details." Clara and Miss Violet worked in silence, strategically positioning the arrangements. The girl couldn't help but notice how different the mansion seemed. The once welcoming corridors now had a cold, impersonal air. The photographs of Helena, Gabriel's deceased wife, had disappeared from the walls. Suddenly, voices approached from the adjacent hallway. Clara immediately recognized Marina's musical laugh. "Darlings, you have no idea the work it took to convince him to change the will," Marina was saying. "But now it's all arranged. In case of unforeseen events, I'll be the sole beneficiary." "Marina, you're simply brilliant," one of the women replied. 3 months of dating and you've already achieved more than many do in years of marriage." Clara exchanged a significant look with Miss Violet, who discreetly approached the half-open study door, pretending to adjust an arrangement. The hardest part was dealing with those people he insisted on helping, Marina continued, "especially that little street pest. But that's also being taken care of. Soon, the neighborhood will be free of that inconvenience." "And what about the old butler and the housekeeper? They seem suspicious." "I've already handled that. The butler received an irresistible offer to work abroad, and the housekeeper, well, let's just say she'll have reasons to resign very soon." Clara felt a chill hearing the veiled threat in Marina's voice. Mrs. Peterson was in danger, and it was all because of her. A phone rang inside the study, interrupting the conversation. Clara took the opportunity to approach a side table where a designer handbag lay abandoned. Her heart almost stopped when she saw a small crystalline vial partially visible. "Clara!" Miss Violet called in an urgent whisper. "Come on, we need to finish the delivery." Reluctantly, the girl moved away. But before they could leave, Marina emerged from the study. "The flowers are divine," she praised, her eyes scanning the arrangements. Then her gaze landed on Clara, and for a moment something dark crossed her face. "Your helper is new?" "My grandniece," Miss Violet replied calmly. "She's spending some time with me." Marina approached Clara, her expensive perfume enveloping the girl like a toxic cloud. "How interesting. You know, you remind me of someone." "Come on, dear," Miss Violet intervened. "We have more deliveries to make." They hurriedly left the mansion, and only when they were several blocks away did Clara manage to breathe normally. "She recognized me," she whispered, trembling. "I'm sure of it." "Yes," Miss Violet agreed, her expression grave. "And that means we need to act faster. But at least now we're sure your suspicions were correct." Dud. Back at the kiosk, while Clara helped arrange more flowers, Miss Violet made notes in a small notebook. "We need concrete proof," she murmured. "Something that can't be ignored. And I think I know exactly how to get it. But it will require a lot of courage, my little one. Are you prepared?" Clara looked at the florist, her eyes shining with determination. "For Mr. Gabriel, I'm ready for anything." Miss Violet's plan was audacious. For years, she had supplied flowers for all the important high society events, including weddings. This meant she had access to information few possessed, including records of previous ceremonies. "Marina Sinclair," Miss Violet murmured, flipping through an old scrapbook. Or could it be Diana Martin, or perhaps Beatrice Almeida? Clara watched, fascinated, as the florist spread old photographs across the kitchen table. In each one, there was a different bride, but they all had something strangely familiar. "Here," Miss Violet exclaimed, pointing to a yellowed photo. "Wedding of businessman Richard Miles, 5 years ago. The bride mysteriously disappeared after her husband's death, 3 months after the ceremony." Clara leaned closer, her eyes wide. The bride in the photo had blonde hair and a different style, but those eyes, they were unmistakably Marina's. "And that's not all," the florist continued, picking up another clipping. 2 years later, Albert Stone, another millionaire, died of natural causes 6 months after the wedding. The inconsolable widow disappeared with the inheritance. An old cell phone found by Clara during one of her dumpster dives rested on the table. The girl had kept it because it still worked, though the screen was cracked. Now it would be crucial to their plans. "The next event at the mansion will be the rehearsal dinner," Miss Violet explained. "All eyes will be on the bride and groom. It'll be our chance." For the next 2 days, they worked tirelessly on preparations. Miss Violet taught Clara how to move like a real florist's assistant, how to maintain the correct posture, how to seem invisible while observing everything. On the night of the rehearsal dinner, the Montgomery mansion was especially illuminated. Luxury cars constantly pulled up to the main gate, bringing elegantly dressed guests. "Remember," Miss Violet whispered, as they entered through the back with the last arrangements, "I need to distract Marina for at least 10 minutes. Use that time wisely." Clara nodded, her heart pounding under her borrowed uniform. The cell phone was secure in her apron pocket, ready to record any evidence they found. The opportunity arose when Marina gathered all the guests in the main room for a toast. Miss Violet approached her with a seemingly urgent question about the ceremony flowers. "Mrs. Sinclair, forgive the interruption, but we need to decide now about the Thai orchids for the altar. The supplier needs confirmation by..." Clara took advantage of the distraction to sneak into Gabriel's study. Her hands trembled as she opened drawers, looking for anything that could incriminate Marina. In the 3rd drawer, she found a folder with wedding documents. Among them, a new will and a life insurance policy with an astronomical payout. Quickly, she photographed everything with the cell phone. A noise in the hallway made her freeze. Footsteps were approaching. "The study should be locked." The voice of Marina's accomplice sounded dangerously close. Clara hid under the massive mahogany desk, barely daring to breathe. The man entered, followed by another she didn't recognize. "The poison is ready," the stranger said in a low voice. Completely undetectable. We'll start administering small doses right after the honeymoon. Marina has it all planned, the accomplice replied. It'll look like a gradual heart problem. The old man won't even know what hit him. Clara frantically recorded the conversation with the cell phone, her hands trembling so much it was hard to keep the device steady. A flower vase on the desk began to slide slowly, pushed by Clara's involuntary movement. Before she could stop it, it fell, shattering on the floor. "Someone's in here!" the unknown man exclaimed. Clara darted out from her hiding place, zipping past the two astonished men like a flash. Her small legs moved faster than they had ever moved before. "Get that brat!" she heard the shout behind her. Running through the mansion's corridors, Clara desperately searched for Miss Violet. The guests, absorbed in their elegant conversations, barely noticed the small uniformed figure speeding past. Finally, she spotted the florist, still talking to Marina. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and Miss Violet immediately understood something had gone wrong. "Oh dear," the florist exclaimed theatrically, dropping a vase filled with water. The liquid splashed onto Marina's expensive dress, causing an instant commotion. In the ensuing confusion, Clara managed to escape through the back of the mansion. She ran non-stop to the flower kiosk, her heart pounding like a wild drum. Half an hour later, Miss Violet arrived, breathless but smiling. "Did you get it?" Clara showed her the cell phone with the photos and the recording, but her expression was one of pure terror. "They saw me, Miss Violet." "What now?" The morning. After the rehearsal dinner, the affluent neighborhood awoke in an uproar. Police cars, parked in front of the Montgomery mansion, attracted curious glances from neighbors. Gabriel, still not fully understanding the situation, watched in astonishment as Marina, in tears, gave a statement to an investigator. "It was horrible," she sobbed, her performance Oscar-worthy. "That little street girl who hangs around the house, she broke into the study during our party. I'm sure she stole important documents. And worse," her voice dropped dramatically, "we found evidence that she was planning to harm me." Clara and Miss Violet watched the scene, hidden on the second floor of the flower kiosk. The girl's heart broke seeing how skillfully Marina manipulated the situation. "She planted false evidence in the guest room," Marina continued. "Altered photos, manipulated recordings, all to defame me. And that florist, Miss Violet, has been helping this little criminal." Gabriel, who had remained silent until then, finally intervened. "Marina, dear, maybe we're overreacting. Clara is just a child." "A child?" Marina turned to him, eyes shining with calculated tears. "Darling, open your eyes. She's a little manipulator. Probably works for one of your competitors. Why do you think she always showed up when you were around? Why do you think she showed so much interest in our lives?" Clara felt tears stream down her face as she watched the scene. How could Marina twist every genuine act of kindness into something dirty and suspicious? "We need to act fast," Miss Violet whispered, tucking the cell phone with the evidence into an old cookie tin. "Marina is more dangerous than we imagined. She won't stop until she completely destroys your credibility." As if to confirm their fears, a new police car arrived at the mansion. A social worker got out, carrying a thick folder of documents. "This is why I always say," Marina declared to everyone present, "we need to support foster care programs. Children can't live on the streets exposed to bad influences. It's our moral duty." "That viper," Miss Violet muttered, her wrinkled hands clenching into fists. "She's even using social services as a weapon." Clara watched in horror as Marina handed an envelope to the police officers. "Here's the proof," she said. "Photos of her following me, notes about our routine, even a suspicious small vial we found among her things." "No!" Clara exclaimed softly. "She's twisting everything." "Quiet, dear," Miss Violet hugged her. "We need to think clearly. Now." Downstairs, Gabriel looked increasingly disturbed. "But what about all the times we talked? She was always so sweet, so..." Manipulative, Marina completed softly. That's what they do, darling. They gain our trust to hurt us later. But don't worry, she caressed his face. I'll protect you. I've already arranged everything. As if responding to an invisible signal, a team of security guards began to spread throughout the neighborhood. Clara recognized among them the man who had chased her days before. They're looking for you, Miss Violet stated, her voice tense, and they won't give up easily. What are we going to do? Clara asked, feeling smaller and more scared than ever. The florist was silent for a moment, watching the movement on the street. Then her face lit up with an idea. Regina, she exclaimed. My friend Regina Sanders, the social worker. She's worked at the city shelter for decades. If we can get to her with our evidence. But the social worker downstairs, she's new in the area, probably manipulated by Marina. Regina is different. She'll listen to us. A noise on the kiosk stairs interrupted their conversation. Heavy footsteps were slowly ascending. Quick! Miss Violet pushed Clara into a small broom closet. Don't make any noise. Seconds later, the apartment door opened. The deep voice of one of the security guards echoed through the cramped space. Miss Violet, you need to accompany us to the station to make a statement. Of course, the florist replied calmly. I just need to get my documents. Clara, huddled in the dark closet, clutched the cell phone with the evidence to her chest. Through a crack in the door, she saw Miss Violet discreetly slide a small piece of paper under the closet. May God protect us, the florist murmured as she was led away. When she finally dared to leave her hiding place, Clara found the note. On it, an address and a message. Regina Sanders, City Shelter. Show her. Trust only her. Outside, the sirens of the police cars faded into the distance, taking her only ally. Clara knew she was alone now, but more determined than ever. With the cell phone safe in her pocket and the address memorized, she had one last chance to save not only Gabriel, but also Miss Violet. The city shelter was on the other side of town. Clara had never ventured so far from her familiar territory, but she had no choice. With the address stored in her memory and the precious cell phone hidden in an inner pocket of the coat Miss Violet had lent her, she began her journey. The first rays of sun had barely broken the horizon when Clara left. The flower kiosk. She had to use all her street smarts to avoid the security guards now patrolling the neighborhood. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every passing car could be someone looking for her. Hey you, one of the guards shouted as she tried to cross a square. Clara dived into a group of students waiting for the school bus, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it wanted to jump out of her chest. The teenagers, absorbed in their conversations and cell phones, didn't even notice the small figure mingling with them. The guard walked right past, and Clara took the opportunity to slip down a side alley. She needed to get to the subway station. She had a few coins she'd saved from tips at the kiosk, enough for a ticket. At the station, another challenge: security cameras everywhere. Clara pulled up the hood of her coat to better cover her face and stayed close to a group of elderly women, chatting animatedly. Poor Mr. Gabriel, one of them commented. First his wife, now all this mess. Did you see it in the paper? Another whispered. They say they found drugs hidden in the mansion's guest room. The fiancé is devastated. Clara clenched her fists tightly. Marina wasn't just destroying her credibility. She was creating an entire scenario to justify anything that happened next. The subway was crowded, which served perfectly for Clara to hide. 3 stops later, she emerged in a completely different neighborhood. Old buildings rose against the gray sky, their peeling facades telling stories of better times. The city. Shelter occupied a 3-story brownstone with blue grills on the windows. Clara watched the comings and goings for a few minutes, hidden behind a newsstand. Staff members came and went, some carrying folders, others escorting children to school. "Looking for something, little one?" The gentle voice made her jump. A black woman with grey hair pulled back in an elegant bun observed her with shrewd eyes from behind tortoiseshell glasses. I'm looking for Miss Regina Sanders," Clara replied, her voice trembling slightly. The woman tilted her head, studying her more closely. "And who's looking for her?" "Miss Violet sent me," Clara whispered, looking around nervously. "She who said I can only trust Miss Regina." Something changed in the woman's gaze. "I'm Regina," she said softly. "Come with me, but through the back door." Clara followed her through a small side garden, entering through a discreet door that led to a cozy room. Children's drawings decorated the walls, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. "Now," Regina said, closing the door and the curtains, "tell me everything from the beginning." With trembling hands, Clara took the cell phone from her pocket and showed the photos of the documents, the recording of the conversation in the study. As the evidence was examined, she narrated the whole story: the meetings at the cafe, the veiled threats, Miss Violet's arrest. Regina listened intently, making occasional notes in a notebook. Her expression grew graver with each revelation. "This is very serious," she murmured finally. "Marina Sinclair, or whatever her real name is, clearly has powerful connections. The speed with which she managed to mobilize the police and social services." A noise in the hallway made them freeze. Voices were approaching. "Regina?" someone called. "The team from the Montgomery mansion is here for a meeting about the missing girl." "Quick!" Regina stood up, guiding Clara to a built-in closet. "Stay here. Don't make any noise, no matter what you hear." Through a crack in the closet door, Clara watched as 3 men in suits entered the room, followed by the social worker, who had been at the mansion earlier. "Miss Sanders," one of them began, his voice falsely cordial, "we have information that a homeless girl may try to make contact with you. It is imperative that you notify us immediately if this happens." Regina calmly adjusted her glasses. "And why is this particular girl so important?" "She poses a danger," the younger social worker intervened. "She has a history of manipulation, theft, and is now involved in an extortion attempt against a respectable family." Clara held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her entire future, and Gabriel's, depended on the decision Regina would make in the next few minutes. Regina maintained a neutral expression as she listened to Marina's men. Her 30 years of experience as a social worker had taught her to read between the lines, to perceive when adults tried to use the system for their own shady interests. "I understand your concern," she said finally, rising to pour coffee for the visitors. "But I must remind you that our protocol requires official documentation for any search for minors. Do you have a court order?" The men exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Ms. Sanders," the tallest of them began, "the situation is delicate. Mr. Montgomery's fiancée is deeply shaken." "I imagine so," Regina replied, her voice calm but firm. "It must be very unsettling to have one's past exposed like that." A tense silence fell over the room. Clara, still hidden in the closet, barely dared to breathe. "What past?" the young social worker asked, confused. Regina walked to her desk and pulled an old folder from a drawer. "It's curious how certain stories repeat themselves," she commented, leafing through the documents. 5 years ago, I worked on a case involving the suspicious death of a businessman. His young widow disappeared mysteriously. Her photo is strikingly similar to Mrs. Sinclair. The men stood up abruptly. "This is slander," the tallest protested. "We will report this conversation to the proper authorities." "Please do," Regina smiled serenely. "It will be an excellent opportunity to review some cold cases. I'm sure the police will be very interested in comparing fingerprints, documents, You don't know who you're messing with, the third man, who had remained silent until then, threatened in a low voice. No, gentlemen, Regina replied, her tone now sharp as steel. You are the ones who don't know. 30 years protecting children have earned me some interesting friends, including a certain homicide division detective who still wonders about that case from 5 years ago. Clara watched, fascinated, as the men left the room, practically dragging the confused young social worker with them. As soon as the door closed, Regina rushed to the closet. Come, little one, she helped Clara out. We don't have much time. They'll be back with reinforcements. You knew about Marina? I suspected, Regina replied, typing rapidly on her computer. Your story triggered some old memories, but I needed concrete proof, which you and Miss Violet provided. She connected Clara's cell phone to her computer, quickly transferring all the evidence. I'll send this to trusted people. Even if something happens to the phone, the proof will be safe. And Miss Violet? Clara asked, her voice trembling. I've already arranged for help. Regina smiled, showing a message on her own cell phone. My detective friend is personally handling her case. She'll be free soon. A plan began to form in Regina's experienced mind. The wedding is in 2 days, right? Marina won't give up easily, especially now that she's so close. She must have a contingency plan. The poison, Clara exclaimed. I heard them talking about starting to use it right after the honeymoon. Exactly, Regina nodded, which means she must be carrying the evidence with her. People like Marina are meticulous. They don't trust anyone to hold on to something so important. The sound of distant sirens made them both jump. Regina acted quickly, putting documents into her bag. We can't stay here, she declared. I know a safe place where we can hide and plan our next move. She guided Clara through a back corridor to an exit that opened onto a side street. A simple car was waiting for them, driven by a kind-looking elderly woman. Clara, this is Sister Constance, Regina introduced as they got into the vehicle. She runs a convent on the outskirts of the city. It's the last place they'd look for you. As the car pulled away from the shelter, Clara saw police cars arriving. Her heart ached, thinking of Gabriel, alone in the mansion with that viper. But now, for the first time since this whole story began, she felt she had a real chance to save him. 2 days, Regina murmured as if reading her thoughts. We have 2 days to gather all the evidence and stop this wedding, and this time, little one, we won't be alone. Clara watched through the car window as the city passed in a blur. Somewhere out there, Marina continued to weave her web of lies. But now, Clara had powerful allies, and more importantly, she had hope. St. Clair's convent, ironically sharing the name of the young protagonist, was an oasis of peace on the outskirts of the city. Ivy-covered walls protected an inner garden, where nuns cultivated medicinal herbs and flowers. To Clara, accustomed to the harshness of the streets, it seemed like a place out of a fairy tale. Sister Constance settled them in a small room in the administrative wing, hastily converted into an operations center. Regina worked tirelessly on her laptop, connecting dots from Marina's past. Found another one, she announced, turning the screen for Clara to see. Christine Valentine, married to a businessman in another state 8 years ago. The husband died 3 months after the wedding, apparently of natural causes. It's her! Clara exclaimed, recognizing the same cold eyes, though the rest of her appearance was different. But how does she fool so many people? Wealthy, lonely people are easy targets, Regina explained gently, especially those who, like Gabriel, have suffered a recent loss. Marina, or whatever her real name is, studied her victims carefully before approaching. A soft knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Sister Constance entered, carrying a tray with hot chocolate and cookies. I have news, the nun announced, her usually serene face showing concern. My niece works for the catering company that will serve the wedding. She told me Marina made a special request. She wants to personally control the preparation and serving of drinks for a private toast with the groom after the ceremony. Regina and Clara exchanged alarmed glances. "The poison," they whispered, in unison. "There's more," Sister Constance continued. "My niece also said Marina carries a small handbag everywhere, never lets anyone touch it. Just today, there was a small scandal when one of the assistants bumped into it." Regina's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was Detective Miller, her old friend. "I managed to get Miss Violet released," he informed her. "But the situation is complicated. Marina has influential friends, people who don't want her past to come to light. They're trying to quash the investigation." "How much time do we have?" Regina asked. "The wedding is our only chance. If she manages to marry Montgomery, it will be much harder to prove anything. She'll have full access to his assets. She can disappear whenever she wants." Clara, listening to the conversation on speakerphone, felt a shiver. What if we can't stop it?" "We will," a new voice sounded from the door. It was Miss Violet, looking tired but determined. "Because now we have something Marina doesn't, an army of angels on our side." She wasn't exaggerating. In the following hours, Clara watched in amazement as a support network formed. Sister Constance activated other nuns who had strategic contacts. A niece in the police force, a sister at the Central Hospital, a former student at the forensic lab. Regina, meanwhile, compiled an impressive dossier. "We've found 5 different identities so far," she explained, spreading documents across the table. "In each case, the pattern is the same: approaching wealthy, lonely men, quick marriage, death by natural causes a few months later." "But why didn't anyone find out before?" Clara asked. "Because she's very smart," Miss Violet replied. "She changes cities, appearance, name, and her victims are always men who, like Gabriel, are private, discreet, the kind of people who don't like to draw attention to their personal lives." Detective Miller arrived at the convent at dusk, bringing more information. "I got a warrant to examine the bank records of the identities we discovered. The money is always transferred to offshore accounts before she disappears." "And the accomplice?" Clara asked, remembering the man from the cafe. "Victor Miles." Miller showed a photo. Expert in forged documents and, surprise, he has a background in pharmaceutical or chemistry. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, but time was running out. Less than 36 hours remained until the wedding. "We need a perfect plan," Regina declared. "Marina is dangerous and used to getting away. We can't give her any chance of escape." Clara looked out the convent window, watching the sun set. Somewhere in the city, Gabriel was probably alone in his mansion, with no idea of the danger he was in. The girl made a silent promise. No matter the risk, she would save him. "I think I know how we can catch her," Sister Constance spoke softly, an unusual glint in her gentle eyes. "But it will require courage, perfect timing, and a small miracle." Sister Constance's plan was as simple as it was audacious. "Marina expects us to try to stop the wedding at the beginning of the ceremony," she explained, unrolling the blueprint of the mansion's garden on the table. "Her security will be focused on the entrances, watching every guest who arrives." "But they won't be prepared for what we'll do," Regina completed, understanding the strategy, "because we're not going to try to stop the beginning of the wedding." "Exactly," the nun smiled. "We'll let the ceremony begin. Let Marina lower her guard, think she's won. And then..." Clara watched, fascinated as the plan unfolded. Each person in the room had a crucial role to play. Sister Constance's niece, working for the caterer, would be their eyes inside the mansion. Detective Miller would position plainclothes officers among the guests. Regina would use her contacts to ensure the media was present at the right moment. But the most important element, Sister Constance said, turning to Clara, is you, little one. The girl felt a knot in her stomach. Me? Marina expects you to try something desperate, Miss Violet explained gently. She probably has specific orders for her security to stop you from getting near the ceremony, but she won't expect you to appear at the I do moment, Clara completed, understanding, when she thinks she's already won. The following hours were of intense preparation. In the small room assigned to her at the convent, Clara was transformed. The nuns, experts in needlework, modified an old First Communion dress to serve as a perfect disguise. You'll be one of the flower girls, Sister Constance explained as she adjusted the dress. Marina is so focused on her victory that she didn't personally check the ceremony list. My niece made sure your name was included at the last minute. Meanwhile, in the makeshift office, Regina and Detective Miller finalized the legal details. As soon as Clara does her part, he explained, my men move in. We already have enough evidence for a pre-trial detention. We just need to catch Marina with the poison in her possession. And what about Victor, the accomplice? Miss Violet asked. Special teams will be monitoring all exits, Miller assured her. He's not going anywhere. Escape this time. On the morning of the wedding, the convent was a hub of contained activity. Nuns moved silently through the corridors, each aware of her mission. Clara had barely slept, her heart alternating between fear and determination. Remember, Regina instructed her during breakfast, you'll only have one chance. When the officiant asks if anyone has any objection to the marriage. I know, Clara nodded. I need to be quick and clear, and most importantly, Sister Constance completed, you need to trust that you're not alone. God doesn't give us burdens heavier than we can bear. Miss Violet, who would be strategically positioned among the guests, hugged Clara tightly. You're the bravest girl I've ever known, she whispered. Your mother, wherever she is, would be proud. The morning passed in a blur of final preparations. The dress was adjusted one more time, Clara's hair was carefully styled, and Regina rehearsed with her exactly what to say and how to act. Timing is crucial, Detective Miller emphasized during the last meeting. My officers can only act after. Clara makes her accusation. If we intercept Marina before that, she could claim persecution, say she's the victim of a conspiracy. At 2 in the afternoon, the plan began to move. The nuns knelt in the convent chapel, beginning a chain of prayers. Miss Violet left first, wearing an elegant blue outfit that would make her blend in with the guests. Regina and Detective Miller left next, each taking a different route. The media, discreetly alerted, began to position themselves near the Montgomery mansion. Finally, it was time for Clara to leave. Sister Constance would take her personally, in a simple car that wouldn't attract attention. Ready? The nun asked softly. Clara touched the small crucifix Sister Constance had given her, now hanging around her neck. She thought of Gabriel, of his genuine kindness, of how he deserved to be saved from that viper. Ready, she replied, her voice firm despite her racing heart. As the car left the convent, Clara looked one last time at the place that had become her refuge. The nuns were gathered in the garden, their hands joined in prayer. Somehow, that image gave her the final courage she needed. The decisive battle was about to begin. The garden of the Montgomery mansion was transformed into a fairy tale scene. Thousands of white orchids and champagne-colored roses decorated every surface, their delicate petals dancing in the gentle afternoon breeze. 300 guests occupied the white chairs, perfectly aligned on the immaculate lawn, all dressed in their finest party attire. Clara, mixed in with the group of children participating in the ceremony, watched everything with a leaping heart. Her white flower girl dress made her practically invisible among the other girls. Marina's security guards, focused on the main entrances, barely glanced at the children's group that arrived with the event staff. From her strategic post, she could see Miss Violet seated discreetly among the guests, her light blue outfit blending perfectly with the elegant attendees. Regina was positioned near the main entrance, chatting casually with other guests as if she were just another family friend. Detective Miller and his officers were scattered throughout the garden, unrecognizable in their party attire. Gabriel appeared at the altar, elegant in his Italian tuxedo. Even from a distance, Clara could see the mix of anxiety and happiness on his face. Her heart ached to think how he had been deceived, how his natural kindness had made him vulnerable to that predator. The music began, soft and melodious. The children started their procession down the central aisle, scattering rose petals. Clara, in their midst, kept her eyes down, focused on not drawing attention before the right moment. Then the wedding march sounded, majestic and solemn. All the guests rose like a coordinated wave. Marina appeared at the garden entrance, stunning in her Valentino gown. Her smile was radiant, triumphant. In her right hand, she held a bouquet of rare orchids. In her left, the small designer handbag she never abandoned. Clara felt a shiver as she noticed the calculating glint in the bride's eyes. That look. How many other men had been deceived by it? How many lives had been destroyed by that seemingly sweet smile? The ceremony began. The officiant, a justice of the peace and a friend of Gabriel's, started his speech about love and commitment. Clara could barely breathe, waiting for the exact moment. Miss Violet had been clear. Timing was everything. If anyone has any objection to this union, the justice of the peace pronounced the fateful words, "Speak now or forever hold your peace." The silence that followed seemed to vibrate with contained tension. Marina smiled, clearly pleased that no one spoke up. Her gaze quickly scanned the garden, looking for any sign of trouble. Finding nothing but smiling faces, she turned to Gabriel, her eyes shining with false adoration. It was now. "I have something to say," Clara shouted, her childish voice echoing clear and strong through the garden. In a swift movement, she pulled off the ribbon tying her hair, letting everyone recognize her. The chaos was instantaneous. Marina paled, her bouquet slipping from her trembling fingers. Gabriel at the altar froze as he recognized his little friend from the streets. "Mr. Gabriel, don't marry her," Clara continued, her voice laden with urgency and genuine love. "She's going to poison you." The guests gasped in shock. The security guards began to move, but before they could reach Clara, Miss Violet stood up. "She's telling the truth," the florist declared loudly. "Marina Sinclair isn't who she says she is." Regina emerged from the crowd carrying a folder. Or should we call her Christine Valentine? Or Diana Martin? How many other names have you used? How many other men have you murdered? Marina, realizing she was cornered, tried to run. But Detective Miller was already prepared. His officers quickly blocked all exits. "The handbag!" Clara shouted. "The poison is in her handbag!" Victor, Marina's accomplice, tried to create a diversion, knocking over flower arrangements. But the plainclothes officers already surrounded him, preventing his escape. In her desperation, Marina did the only thing she could. She grabbed Gabriel, pressing something against his back. "Nobody move!" she screamed, her mask of sweetness completely shattered. "Or he dies right now." The garden plunged into a deathly silence. The afternoon sun shone on the frozen scene. The bride turned criminal, the groom hostage, the little street girl who had uncovered everything, and hundreds of horrified guests witnessing every second. The moment of truth had arrived. And no one, not even Clara, could predict how it would end. Time seemed to have frozen in the garden of the Montgomery mansion. Marina, her eyes now cold as ice, held Gabriel firmly. The small, designer handbag pressed against his back as if it contained a weapon, But Clara knew what was really inside, the poison she planned to use for another murder. "Let us pass," Marina demanded, her voice trembling slightly. "Or I swear he won't. Leave here alive." Detective Miller made a discreet gesture, and his men retreated a few steps, maintaining a strategic circle around the couple. The guests, paralyzed between fear and fascination, watched the scene as if they were watching a thriller. It was Gabriel who broke the tense silence. "Marina, why?" His voice sounded hurt, confused. "I gave you everything. My love, my trust." "Love?" Marina laughed, a cold, cutting sound. "Love is for fools, Gabriel. You're just another rich, lonely old man, desperate for company. Too easy." Clara watched the scene, her small heart beating furiously. Through the tears that were beginning to form, she noticed something the others seemed to have missed. Miss Violet had discreetly disappeared during the commotion. "How many others?" Gabriel asked, his voice growing firmer. "How many men have you deceived like this?" "As many as necessary," Marina replied curtly. "All just like you, rich, naive, pathetic in their loneliness." As she spoke, Clara noticed a gentle movement behind the flowers decorating the altar. Miss Violet, using her years of experience in floral arrangements, had snuck through the decorative bushes. "But you made a mistake this time, Marina." Regina stepped forward, holding a tablet. "You left living witnesses. We have all the proof. Your previous identities, the weddings, the suspicious deaths." "Shut up!" Marina screamed, her veneer of sophistication completely shattered. "You won't catch me. Not after so much time, so much planning." It was then that Clara saw her chance. Marina was focused on Regina, her attention divided between the officers in front and the threats to her plan. The girl knew she had only one opportunity. "Mr. Gabriel," Clara called softly, her eyes meeting his. "Remember when we used to talk at the gate? You always said that kindness isn't weakness." Gabriel nodded slightly, something changing in his gaze. Comprehension, perhaps, or courage. "Kindness isn't weakness," he repeated, his voice gaining strength. "And loneliness isn't stupidity, Marina. It's humanity." In a swift movement, he threw himself to the side, unbalancing Marina. At the same instant, Miss Violet emerged from the floral arrangements behind them, grabbing the designer handbag forcefully. "No!" Marina screamed, trying to maintain control of the bag. In the struggle that followed, its contents spilled onto the ground. A crystal vial rolled across the grass, along with documents, fake passports, and a small handgun. The police officers advanced immediately. Marina tried to reach the gun, but Clara was faster. With the agility acquired on the streets, the girl kicked the gun away, sending it sliding to Detective Miller's feet. "Marina Sinclair," the detective announced formally, as his officers restrained her, "or Louise Thornton, whatever your real name is, you are under arrest for the murders of Richard Miles, Albert Stone." As he listed the crimes, forensics experts were already securing the area, carefully collecting the vial of poison and the scattered documents. Victor, the accomplice, was already handcuffed and being led to a squad car. Gabriel stood still for a moment, looking at the chaos his dream wedding had turned into. Then, slowly, he walked over to Clara. "You saved my life," he said simply, kneeling to her eye level. "Twice, actually. First from loneliness, with your sincere friendship, and now—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Clara threw herself into his arms, finally allowing all the tears held back for weeks to flow freely. Regina approached, placing a protective hand on Clara's shoulder. "She's an extraordinary child," she said softly. "She risked everything to protect someone who cared about her." "And now," Miss Violet added, joining the group, "perhaps it's time to ensure she never has to risk anything again." Gabriel looked at the small figure in his arms, then at the two women who had helped unmask Marina. A decision was beginning to form in his heart, one that would change not only his life, but also Clara's forever. A week after the wedding that never happened, the garden of the Montgomery mansion was festive once again. This time, however, the celebration was very different. There were no expensive orchids or extravagant decorations, just colorful roses, lovingly grown at Miss Violet's kiosk and simply arranged by Clara herself. The girl could hardly believe the transformation in her life. After the dust settled and Marina was taken away by the police, events unfolded with surprising speed. Regina, with her experience and contacts, had expedited all the bureaucratic processes. Gabriel, determined to do the right thing, wasted no time in applying for temporary custody of Clara. You nervous? Miss Violet asked, adjusting the new dress Clara wore, simple but infinitely more beautiful than the old flower girl uniform. A little, Clara admitted, watching the guests arrive for the small celebration. This time, they weren't society figures, but people who truly mattered. The nuns from the convent, the police officers who helped with the case, former mansion employees returning to their posts. Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper Marina had tried to dismiss, was back in the kitchen, preparing homemade treats that filled the air with welcoming aromas. The old butler had also returned, refusing the fake job offer abroad Marina had arranged to get rid of him. "You know what makes me happiest?" Gabriel commented, approaching Clara with a gentle smile. Seeing Helena's photographs back on the walls, Marina had hidden them in the attic, but now they can tell our story to you. Clara looked at the nearest portrait, where a woman with a sweet smile held a bouquet of red roses. Did she like flowers too? She adored them, Gabriel replied, his eyes misting over. In fact, it was at Miss Violet's kiosk that we met. Helena always said that flowers have the power to heal hearts. And she was right, Miss Violet added softly. Just look at us now. Regina arrived at that moment, carrying a folder of documents. Her eyes shone with satisfaction. It's all set, she announced. The judge just signed the temporary custody order. In 6 months we can begin the formal adoption process. Clara felt her heart soar. Adoption, a word she had never dared to dream of in all her years on the streets. And there's more, Detective Miller, who had just arrived, added. Marina, or rather Louise Thornton, that's her real name, confessed to everything. With the evidence we gathered and her confession, she and her accomplice won't see the light of day for a very, very long time. Sister Constance, observing everything with her serene smile, approached Clara. You see, sometimes God uses small hands to perform the greatest miracles. The celebration continued softly through the afternoon. It was a party of new beginnings. For Gabriel, who was discovering that his heart could still expand to welcome a new love, this time a father's love. For Clara, who was finally finding not just a home, but an entire family of people who loved her. For Miss Violet, who gained an official helper at her flower kiosk. Look what I found in the attic, Gabriel said, handing Clara an old music box. It was Helena's. She used to say it held melodies of hope. Clara opened the box delicately. A soft tune began to play, filling the air with crystalline notes. Gradually, other people joined them, each bringing something special. Mrs. Peterson, with her cinnamon cookies, the butler with old stories of the mansion, the nuns with their whispered blessings. In the late afternoon, as the sun painted the sky pink and gold, Clara helped Miss Violet water the new rose bushes they had planted in the garden. You know, little one, the florist commented, they say every rose has a story to tell. Here will tell yours, the story of the girl who saved not just a good man, but also herself. Clara looked around at Gabriel, chatting animatedly with Regina about the next legal steps. at Sister Constance and her nuns, who had turned a convent into a rescue headquarters, at Detective Miller, who had proven that justice sometimes just needs a little nudge from fate. "I think we saved each other," she replied simply, her small hands dirty with soil, her heart overflowing with joy. And there, in the garden that had once witnessed a near tragedy, a new family blossomed, proving that happy endings sometimes arrive in the most unexpected moments and places.